Washington Irving. Washington Irving lived from 1783 to 1859. He spent most of his youth in New York, including the areas of western New York largely populated by Dutch immigrants. While he spent his younger years in America, he spent a significant portion of his adult life living in England to tend to his family's business interests. Thus, he gained a good understanding of the European views of American culture. He first gained popularity in both England and the United States for his observational nonfiction writing, initially using the pseudonym Diedrich Knickerbocker. His writing employed satire and dry wit, which led to it gaining national and international popularity. In fact, he was the first American writer to be embraced in England as a true literary star. The British had previously looked on most American writers as amateurish. Beyond his nonfiction writing, his short stories, which most famously include Rip Van Winkle, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and The Devil and Tom Walker, gained great popularity. These stories helped to popularize the short story genre and served to influence American writers such as Nathaniel Hawthorne, Herman Melville, Edgar Allan Poe, and James Fenimore Cooper. Irving was most interested in investigating how America was to develop its own unique identity now that it was separate from England. The colonies had largely remained British in terms of culture, so he's intrigued to look at how America will develop. Irving wanted America to seem to have its own unique literary identity, separate from the British. As such, he wanted his stories to connect America to a larger, often oral tradition beyond Britain. He saw America as a unique place, connected to Europe, but also influenced by the Native Americans and the conflicts that occurred with Native Americans, as well as the excesses of European religion. That influence could be seen in groups like the Puritans. Irving was interested in what kept communities together. He saw historically that oral tradition created a sense of connectedness. He wanted to connect America to a larger sense of tradition rather than make the unifying force a sense of newness, which is more of what Jefferson and Paine and others of that era had appealed to. Now let's talk about the story Rip Van Winkle. Don't continue with this part of the lesson until you've actually read the story, otherwise this won't make much sense. As you see in the beginning of the story is theoretically told by Diedrich Knickerbocker. This was a pseudonym that Irving often used in his stories. Initially, this pseudonym was not revealed as a fake name. Many of the original readers thought that that was the actual writer of this kind of story. But as Irving's reputation developed, it became to be known that he was the true writer and Knickerbocker was more the persona that he was using to develop these stories. Irving borrows the basic storyline of this from a Germanic folk tale. He did the same kind of thing with his other very popular story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. This can be seen as an attempt on his part to connect American culture to a larger tradition, particularly one that is not British. Note that some of the settlers in America were non-British in origin. Some groups had come over from the Netherlands. Some German soldiers, known as the Hessians, who were hired by the British to fight against the colonies, ended up staying in America and settling here. The character Rip Van Winkle is one of those Dutch colonists. As we see in the story, Rip Van Winkle sleeps through the American Revolution. He's more interested in the cultural changes that occurred in the 20 years he slept rather than the political changes. Within the story, we can note Irving's use of humor. The story isn't to be too serious. For example, we have Rip's nagging wife, and him being glad to be free of her tyranny. So there's a much less serious tone to the writing of this time than we saw the writing of Revolutionary era, where the issues of tyranny were certainly brought up then, but not in a humorous way at all. Irving uses this story to connect the American culture, in this case, to the Dutch colonial founder Hendrik Hudson, Remember, within the story, he and his buddies come back every 20 years just to check on things. Here we see Irving showing an interest in these supernatural but benevolent forces, the idea of ancestry as not exactly gone even though they're dead. Note that Irving is using some of the common mysticism and presence of spirit that is often associated with the Native Americans. He even references this within the story's postscript. But he's now trying to connect this to a unique American identity.